And it's a very good afternoon to the Sportsfan Radio panel. Lockdown edition, another one. Seem to be taking up a few of those now. But the good part is we get to talk about sport, and what I thought we'd first look at today is 4 new teams in the AFLW for season number 7 in the AFLW. Sarah, what were your thoughts about that when it was announced during the week?
Really excited, especially as I am a Hawthorn supporter. It was amazing to see that Essendon, Hawthorn, Port Adelaide and Sydney will all be having teams in the 2022-23 season. So,
Sarah, did it surprise you that they were all admitted at the one time?
Not necessarily. I thought it was either going to go all 4 at once or 2 and 2. So I was expecting one or the other. It was interesting to see as well a lot of the feedback, or I guess some of the comments on social media in regards to diluting the talent pool and a few other questions as well. All questions that could be applied to any situation and whenever they would have come in eventually. But I don't think it's anything that AFLW fans will have to be worried about. We'll still see some amazing young people coming through, and hopefully as the competition grows, we'll see a larger participation rate and a lot more competitiveness for the draft in the AFLW.
Sarah, surely that dilution argument is well and truly gone. It'll be different with the AFL out of 4 teams because there's a very mature men's market, but the women's market has become, as we've discussed, a revolution in the past 4 or 5 years. And so there are so many more women playing now than there were 5 years ago that dilution argument has just got, it's a silly argument, I would have thought.
It definitely is. I think it's just the same group of people repeating the same arguments and not really being able to come up with much other things, or just trying to contribute to the conversation any way that they can. It'll be interesting to see how the competition goes with the 4 new teams. It will spice up the dynamic a little bit. It'd be great to see a few more of those local derbies going on as well, with Port Adelaide coming in and Sydney being able to come in as well. There's teams all over the place that are going to have a really red hot go in this competition. I know there's already been some conversation about the rivalries already between the clubs, and other AFLW community members conveying how excited they are for these new clubs to join the competition.
It's great to see, because it's come in the same week when my code NRL has put expansion on the back burner, to the point where Wayne Bennett, the Rabbitohs coach, probably pushing for one of the new jobs, which may not exist. The AFL has knocked back the Tasmania option. It's great to see the women's game is expanding in this time of negativity, if you call it that.
Exactly. No, it's some really nice news, especially for a lot of Australians who are currently being locked down at the moment and trying to stay safe amongst the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's going to be a really good opportunity, I think, for the game to grow, and especially for more fans to get involved. I know myself, I've always been a football fan, and when the AFLW competition started and there wasn't a Hawthorn team, I was still invested in the game and really connected to the competition. But there'll be other Hawthorn, Port Adelaide, Sydney, Essendon supporters who are really ready to now get behind the AFLW sides and are really ready to become involved in the AFLW competition.
So more teams, that must mean more rounds.
We think it should. I couldn't see why they wouldn't do it, and especially as this has kind of sparked up more news or stirred the pot up of conversations in regards to the AFLW a little bit. More people are talking about more rounds in the AFLW and lining up the AFLW season with the AFL season to turn competitions, the AFL and AFLW competitions, into double headers and connect more fans with their club's community.
Sarah, that's not going to happen next year. I think the next season is starting November, December, and it'll be a 10-round competition. I think is that 2 more games than this year, but it's less than half the men's season. Is that disappointing, do you think?
One more, John.
One more, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, so 1 more game to the season. Still disappointing to hear. but something that was announced a few years ago when they were talking about the expansion of the competition and gradually increasing the number of matches. I don't know if they'll go straight from having the amount of matches they have now to the exact same amount of the men's competition, as would have to be a lot of work going into the female athletes' bodies to prepare them for playing that amount of games. But I'm hoping it's something that we see in the next couple of years. It'll be a great opportunity for more people to see their AFLW clubs in action.
It's good you've got a women's team to support with Hawthorn. It's good they got rid of that bum Clarkson. He obviously can't coach. It's a good job they knifed him. My word.
No, it'll be.
What more could he do? Anyway, don't mention Jeff Kennett.
No, we can't. No, I'm even in my household, we're trying to avoid the Clarko conversation, especially after watching the Tasmanian fans bid him farewell the other night when we beat the Bulldogs, which is another very exciting match. But the AFLW competition, as we were talking about last week, doesn't currently have any female head AFLW coaches, but we'll now see Beck Goddard is already locked in to coach the Hawks for the 2022-23 season. So we have one female head coach to add to the ranks.
I was reading with the Taylor Walker situation, the minimal amount of Indigenous executives on the men's side. It's probably similar on the women's side, the lack of diversity there, which is a real concern. And it needs to change pretty quickly if you do want inclusivity.
Gelding, four new teams.
Yeah.
Give me the over under on the number of women coaches that will be appointed to those 4 new teams. Now there's already one. So out of the remaining 3, how many more women will be appointed as head coach?
I would hope at least 2, Professor, but on a betting side, I'd have to say 3 to 1. I'm not saying it's right or anything, but that just seems to be the way they were going. Had an interesting point on Paul's point. It'd be interesting to see how many Indigenous women are actually playing in the league compared to, say, the number of men playing, Indigenous men actually playing. I think there's a big lack of both in the women's competition, women coaches, and if we want to call them line coaches. But also there just seems to be not a lot of Indigenous girls playing.
Good point.
Any comment on that, Sarah? Or Professor?
It is a disappointing figure to see. I know that the amount of some of the female athletes in the AFLW shine incredibly brightly, and we've seen some amazing stars coming through in the competition. Maddie Press-Parkis, as an example, has won the League Rising Star and the League Best and Fairest consecutive years. And now we see her sister coming through the competition as well, Georgie Press-Parkis. She was drafted to Geelong this year. We can only really hope that we'll see a more diverse pathway coming through to both the AFL and AFLW competitions in the coming years. I know the AFL has made an effort to create their multicultural programs and try and connect with a range of different people and bring them into our great game, but it will now be a case of the fact that we can include everyone. We just have to now get everyone involved.
Petreski Seaton that plays at Melbourne obviously was injured this year, but contributed to the design of the Indigenous jumper this year, and she's been a big promoter of that amongst AFLW, but also the AFL program as well.
Definitely, and I think the Carlton AFL Indigenous jumper was designed collaboratively by, I think it was 10 Indigenous players they have across their AFL and AFLW ranks.
So, Sarah, the 4 teams come in season 7. Now, for those of the viewers who don't understand, that's not the next AFL season, because the next AFL season will be season 6, starting in either late November or early December. Were you surprised that maybe 2 teams weren't admitted in season 6?
Not necessarily. I think it was, as I said before, it was either going to be one or the other, 2 teams now or 4 teams later. But I think it makes sense for the 4 teams to, I guess, go in at once, prepare the league and expand it. And that way they've all got the same amount of time to prepare their teams as well. I can only assume that a lot of clubs have been preparing and building their AFLW programs for a very long time before being granted their licenses. Hawthorn, as an example, pretty much had Beck Goddard set up for them and appointed as soon as they had the license given to them. But it will be interesting to see how exactly these teams all go ahead and clash together, and especially as all 4 of them come in, how quickly we might get to that point where they're playing the same amount of games as the men's competition.
Further to that, Sarah, around the female coaching is that Port Adelaide, have indicated they will appoint a female coach. What's their intention to? And Gil McLaughlin also raised that the lack of female coaches is on the agenda at the moment. And he used a word we talked about last week. So whether Gil's watching, I'm not sure. But, John, I heard the word quota mentioned.
Oh, yeah? And what was the arguments there?
No, they didn't go any further. It was just that it was mentioned. So you hope not, because as we discussed last week, that doesn't get any credibility. But certainly one with Beck Goddard being involved. And hopefully then Port Adelaide will start seeing some more involvement and more senior coaching roles from people that deserve it and females that deserve it.
Yeah. And that's the point, Coutta. It's now becoming a more mature market, and there's absolutely no doubt that there are women who are able. We know that they're there, and it is past annoying that they get the short list of contestants and always say, "Oh well, the woman's gone very close this time. Now they're down to the last 2, down to the last 4." But we parachuted some bloke like Nick Del Santo in, and he's got it, despite the fact he's never coached before.
Yeah,
very annoying. But this should be a litmus test for where the maturity of the market really is. I think, Sarah, with the 4 new teams coming in, it can be no excuses.
Exactly.
And so going on from that, John, if you start looking at results for AFLW and where teams finish or the wins that they've had, it's a long haul. So it's not going to be you come in one season and you win 5 or 6 games. You might win 1 or 2. And Gelding's obviously a Richmond man, and they won a couple of games and drew one, I think, this year. And the progression will come. It's got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as they start saying, "Oh, the expansion teams didn't win a game or didn't have been uncompetitive," then we've got a real problem. So I think that's where, like, if Essendon come in and Hawthorn, when they come in, people have to realise that this is going to be not just a 1-year thing. This is hopefully going to be a 100, 200, 300-year process. And who knows what it looks like in 5, 10, 20 years' time. I think that's the exciting part. We're in a great period at the moment.
It's one of the great trivia questions. Which AFL teams, AFL teams, have never won a premiership? The one that's always forgotten is University. In the early days of the AFL, the VFL in those days, I think University went for about 10 years and won about 5 games throughout the whole period. So there's certainly a precedent for not doing that well. And I might say this, in Kilda since 1873 has only won 1 premiership. So there's certainly patience out there for losing teams.
Professor, maybe a quick comment from Sarah, maybe if she wants to comment on, because we've said on this show many, many times, we think the women's play season should be aligned with the male season and have the 2 games against the same sides, which would seem ideal now with the 4 new sides coming in. But the talk of extending the women's to a summer season and the male being a winter season, what's her views on that?
I enjoy seeing the AFLW get its own spotlight. It's a really good opportunity for more people to see the game, but I think it's also weird for myself and other AFL fans seeing the game being played in summer as it is a winter sport. And I'd love to see, I guess, more opportunities for the game to be a bit more tied in with AFL, as I've never been, they're both thought of as very separate entities, and that's completely understandable. They are, but they're playing the same game. And I'd love to see a bit more interaction between the two of them on that game day level and being able to see them tie in together. Whether we get to the point where women and men are headlining matches or playing together on the same day, if you're seeing North Melbourne's women's and men's teams travelling to Tasmania together to take on another club, it'd be a really good opportunity for that one club mentality to really come into force in our game, as we're seeing a lot at local levels and community sport levels as well. We just kind of have to get there and see what happens. So I'm hoping that I'm a bit on the fence. I'd love to see the girls' game played in the winter alongside the men's competition, but I'm also enjoying currently being able to have footy all year round.
As a Richmond supporter and a Richmond member, I'd like to go to the football and be able to see a men's game and a women's game on the same day together at the MCG if we ever get back to something like that. And I just thought it was, a bit unfair on the women. January and February, there's going to be 40-degree days of playing football. Whether that's could take a greater toll than, say, if I played, during what we call the AFL season.
We have seen some extreme weathers in terms of both competitions as well. There have been some mid 40 degree days that AFLW games have taken place in. We've also seen the AFL competition play in the snow. It was Hawthorn GWS played the first, I think, only game where it snowed. But it's definitely a winter game, and I'd love to see both competitions playing alongside each other eventually.
Good.
All right, Sarah, thanks for that input. We may as well stay on the AFL. During the week, Gil had a fairly busy week, announcing not only 4 new AFLW teams, but also announcing the Colin Carter report with the investigation into a team in Tasmania. Coutta, let me ask you a question. Was there such a big investigation and report into whether teams should be in GWS or Gold Coast?
Not that we ever received, I don't think, Professor. I think, we've now seen the way that Vlad Demetrio operates, so it probably may not come as a massive surprise. They probably did some feasibility studies, something to put in the file to say that was done if ever it got looked at, but I'm not sure that we've done that many studies that we're doing for a business case to have a team in Tasmania. Obviously, the Carter report was tabled and it came up with numerous suggestions. The Premier of Tasmania came out and spoke pretty strongly in regards to that report. But at the end of the day, it's just another bit of paper. It's a piece of the paper that will be used maybe down the track. Really, at the end of the day, are they going to have a 19th team? Are they going to relocate a team? Is there going to be a team that is half Melbourne, half Tasmania? I don't know what they're looking at, to be honest, Professor. We're watching currently the women's competition expand. We talked about it before, the dilution of talent is a non-issue. So what's the non-issue with having a 19th team and having a bye? I
was going to say a couple of points on it. If I'm a Tasmanian and I look at the 300 million that they've sunk into the Gold Coast Suns for dubious returns, apart from a larger TV deal, I'd be wondering, what about us? But also, if you look at a team, let's call them North Melbourne, and they play half the games in Tasmania. One thing I do know about Tasmania, if you play them all in Hobart, the Launceston people won't be impressed. If you play them all in Launceston, the Hobart people won't be impressed. Would it be presumed that half the games would be split between the two cities? That's another issue if you wanted to capture Tasmania in its entirety.
Oh, and that's a point, is that if you go to the north of Tasmania, they only drink Bogues, and you go to the south of Tasmania, it's Cascade. So they are very parochial about the territory. And would it be called? What would it be called? Tasmania? Anyway, don't get me started on it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, Professor, which is really disappointing for the people of Tasmania. They'll probably continue to sink money into Hawthorn and North Melbourne.
Well, they may not now.
Well, yeah, I think they will, Gelding. I don't think he'll cut the foot off. I think they'll continue to support them, whether it's through sponsorship by the Spirit of Tasmania or Tasmanian government themselves directly.
Professor, on this, is there any logical reason not to have, like, Tasmanian Devils? I feel like it's beer o'clock on the show, is it?
I don't know, Gelding.
Coutta just knocked one down, did he? Or
No,
Probably gravitas, so the sponsor.
Coffee here.
coffee? Yeah.
you missed
You
the
think that they
Nano
would have put a
before the show.
Tasmanian team in but for COVID? What I heard and read between the lines, it wouldn't have happened even if there was no such thing as COVID. It doesn't seem that they were using that as an excuse not to put a team there.
Well, wouldn't common sense say, announce it, say, yes, we're going to put a sign in, make it 2023 or 4, and just say they're going to be in the capital of Tasmania, Hobart, and call them the Tasmanian Devils? It would seem fairly obvious, and then you can have this build-up to 23 or 24 when they come in.
Yeah, but there's a lot of resentment towards Hobart, as there are in a lot of countries,
Yeah, I know
towards,
there's
like
the North-
Americans towards California.
Yeah, I know
It-
there's the North and the South and the Confederates and all that, but
If you just based it in Hobart, you might lose a lot of fans.
well, it is the capital of the state.
Curtis, should we be surprised? The AFL commissions this report. I get the report which states the bleeding obvious that there are 3 possibilities: a relocated team, a shared team, or a brand new startup. And then the AFL says, oh, gee, there are 3 options. It's really complicated. We're going to have to think about this. The water's been murkied. And so they make an excuse for themselves for non-action. And so that's why I think this is contemptible by the AFL to do what they're doing. And then they say, even before they're asked, we're going to cut out any possibility that the Gold Coast Suns are going to be relocated. So the most obvious choice, I think, is not to make a 19th team, but to relocate that bloody money pool of the Gold Coast Suns, which is just, talk about dilution of talent. That's all it is. And all of our treasury goes into the Gold Coast, which is never, ever going to work. There has to be, for a national game, to be a team in Tasmania. The answer is bloody obvious. And the only obvious alternative, Gil straight away jumps on and says, before you guys even ask me, Gold Coast Suns aren't moving. To me, it's contemptible what the AFL is doing. And I think this has actually put the Tasmanian cause backwards, not forward, which was the intended reason for the report. But it's like Johnny Howard with the Republic. You just murky the waters and nothing gets done. And I'm really worried this is just going to put the cause back 10 years.
It's Gold Coast are here to stay. The Giants are here to stay. Tasmania is a great place to go to travel. I think that for us as football fans, I've been to Tasmania 3 or 4 times to watch Hawthorn with mates. We go down and we spend a weekend down there. We play golf at Barnbougle, fly in Friday, play golf Barnbougle, hit the town on a Saturday, watch the game on Sunday, fly out Monday. Now, it's a great weekend away.
Yeah.
I can recommend it to absolutely anyone. And could you imagine the same thing if they had their own team? It would absolutely be packed every weekend.
And Keith,
Every weekend.
on that, I can see them playing both at Hobart and Launceston. 30,000 packed is better than 40,000 at the MCG because the passion will be there. And I think it's a no-brainer in terms of when you look at the finance, it'll be financed by the Tasmanian government. St Kilda's financed by bloody Dare Coffee, which, I mean you, but they're not a huge brand to me. This will be the best resourced club. They won't be handouts for $15 million like St Kilda is every year. They'll stand on their own 2 feet. And you look at Tasmania is a football state. Some of the greatest players have come from there. It's a mature state. They won't have the problems the Gold Coast has or GWS has got that nobody wants to go to the game.
It astounds me how many
Exactly
Melburnians
right,
haven't been
John.
to Tasmania, and you make a good point, Coutta. You'd have your fans booking it in for a once-a-year trip down there. It'd be amazing.
Especially when you can get $40 return airfares back in the glory days, and they've got great beers down there. It's probably another reason to go there too.
That
can
Barn
highly
Bugle,
recommend.
I've heard, though, it can get that windy. Some holes, it's a pitching wedge one day and it's a driver the next.
Yeah, the first day we
Bit
went
different
there,
to the Queensland slogan, beautiful one day, perfect the next. You could have pitching wedge one day, driver the next.
No, the time we went there, we did play on, I think it was the Friday, and we got washed out the third hole in. And the next day we went back, and I think the group in front of us was Hawthorn footballers, Jeff Kennett and group. So, fortunately, the aim wasn't too bad that day because Jeff could have really come off. Might have had to have worn a helmet. But no, I think it's a no-brainer. At the end of the day, let's get Tasmania going. It'll be competitive. There's no doubt at all because people want to play for Tasmania.
Coutta, do you agree that the 19th team really isn't feasible? You can't have a bye in the competition every week.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
You could,
Well, they've got a pre-finals bye. So why not have a bye every round during the season?
Yeah.
Isn't that what the Players Association are asking for? Like we have a bye in the season already, where you have the split round.
But you don't have a bye in round one, though, Gelding. This is what you'd have. You have a bye in round one, round two, round three. The idea of the bye is to be strategic, to have it pretty much in the middle of the year or late middle of the year when the players are starting to get a bit knackered. I think that's a reason for the bye.
Yeah,
you could get that Crows leadership team to put on a seminar or a weekend retreat for the bye weekend for each team.
All right, John, just think about this, though. If there was a 19th team admitted to the competition, that would be 18 rounds so that every team plays each other just once.
Yeah.
We'd be going back to the 1960s when an AFL season was 18 rounds.
Yeah, true.
Perfect.
There is that. But I'm still saying that I'm against it. But that does make nice sense to do it that way. But I'd still go with a longer season myself.
All right. Final question on this topic, Judge. Should it be a relocated team, a hybrid team, or a Tasmanian team in its own right?
Okay, what they should do is that the Gold Coast Suns should pack up all their players, all their staff, all their money they've got from the AFL, tootle them down to Tasmania. So they'd start with a winning team and pedal like hell after that. But if they start from scratch, it'll be not good.
Did you see when that was put to Gill, though, Judge?
What's that?
Did you see when that was put to Gill that should happen? I mean, there's several reasons why that won't happen. Is the ego of the man, the ego of the AFL. They've spent $300 million, and also the Gold Coast is the fastest and biggest, especially with COVID, fastest growing area in the country. So I wouldn't be recommending that because it's a gold mine. Everyone's waiting for the Titans to take off. No team's ever made it work there. But I know enough about the AFL and the ego and the money involved. They would not admit their mistake. The GWS is making some sort of return on what's been ploughed in of the $300 million. But I don't think that would ever happen. I don't think that there'd be anyone as humble enough to admit it hasn't worked on the Gold Coast.
All right, Paul, what's your solution, Paul?
Was that a yes or no question you asked, Professor?
No. No, it wasn't a yes or no. There were three options. Paul, which option do you think?
I'd be pushing North Melbourne to play half their games, so split the half games between Hobart and Launceston and hope that gains some traction down there. I don't think the time is right to put a new team in at the moment. But for COVID, my answer might be different.
Gelding?
Tasmanian side from scratch, Professor.
Coutta?
I'm with the Gelding on this, and if you announced it as in from 2025, that gives you plenty of time to be able to prepare for it, launch it, do it properly, and the talent pool will not be as thin as what people are saying.
Sarah?
I think it's something that I'd love to see. Obviously, a Tassie team. I've loved travelling down there as a Hawthorn supporter, but I know I've also loved joking with my North Melbourne friends that the Tassie Kangaroos has a nice ring to it, and the colours look nice down there. It'll be something that I think will happen, but I'd love to see a team maybe get relocated and maybe remove a bit more of the Victorian bias that we see a little bit in the AFL.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. And my thoughts, I agree with Coutta and the Gelding. Why would Tasmanian fans who already have an AFL team be interested in supporting a relocated team or a hybrid team? I just can't see the benefit of it. I think they've got to start from scratch and keep Gold Coast where they are.
Isn't that what the Brisbane Lions are, though?
And Sydney Swans are both relocated teams, Paul.
Look at the Swans support, and the Lions support is gaining, and it will if they go deep these finals.
Yeah, I don't know that Brisbane necessarily wanted an AFL team to start with, though.
Well, there's another sport that goes all right there.
Yes, there is.
The Brisbane Lions did play with a greyhound track at one stage, so
yep,
they've come a long way from those glory days at Carrara with Chris Case and people like Shane Reynolds and the like playing up there.
All right, topic 3 for today, and it's back to you, Sarah. The reports during the week of netball being the big push for inclusion in the 2032 Brisbane Olympics. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think myself, along with a lot of Australians and netball fans, would absolutely love to see netball brought into the Olympics, especially in 2032 when it's hosted in Brisbane. I did a little bit of research for the Netball World Cup in 2027. We will see 16 teams or 16 countries participating in the World Cup. And I think that's enough to create a really stimulating competition amongst people, even if you whittled it down and maybe brought it to 12, like they have competing in the men's basketball at the Olympics. Still a really good opportunity for these amazing athletes to showcase their talent on the world stage and take it to the next level as well. I think there are a lot of netball athletes who have demonstrated some amazing patriotism and are really committed to their country and would absolutely love to be able to get onto that sort of platform and really demonstrate their love for their country. It'll be interesting to see the next step, especially as there's always been a really strong rivalry between certain netball countries, and there is a big strength of netball in Commonwealth countries especially. That was one of the main arguments against having it involved in the Olympics, but I still don't see why it can't be brought in, because sports like netball would also possibly generate a lot more fans than rhythmic gymnastics or other sports as well. It's a new opportunity to bring more fans into the Olympics, and I can't see why they wouldn't want to go down that path.
Well, it's certainly a possibility. There were a number of sports introduced into the 2020 Olympics, including baseball, softball, karate, skateboarding, sports climbing, and surfing. Now, they were all added, so I would have thought that netball would have as big a following as maybe sports climbing or surfing.
Yes, I think it would have a really great ability to bring a new group of fans into the Olympics as well. A really great following across the world. And there was a lot of feedback on when netball or World Netball announced that they were putting in their bid to the IOC. A lot of people were saying that a lot of countries don't participate in netball. There was a lot of conflict against, there's only 16 teams at the World Cup, only 16 teams actually participating in it, which is also very wrong. It's very likely that almost every country that has a big sporting presence would have a netball team. America has a netball team. They're just ranked 26th and they don't qualify to make the World Cup. And there'd be plenty of other teams as well who have netball teams and have a netball following in their country, whether it's big or small. They just might not have the greatest team to actually qualify for the World Cup level or an Olympic level, which can be said for, I think it was the other 150 countries that submitted basketball teams but didn't qualify for the Olympics.
Apart from countries not being interested in the game, I just made a list of sports that nobody is interested in, apart from the coming Olympics. And just get this list: long jump, triple jump, pole vault, shot put, hammer throw, javelin throw. I think it's called rhythm gymnastics, but I call it ribbon and ball. Nobody is interested in those sports at all. Netball has got a great following, and it's a following year in, year out. So that argument to me is just a nonsense argument. One of the arguments I thought that there was going to be put up, Sarah, was that men don't play it. So therefore there's a gender issue. Now, is that correct? And B, if it is, what's your view on that?
It's an interesting argument because the IOC is striving for gender equity now. There are only 2 sports that are competed in by a single gender. I think that's rhythmic gymnastics and Greco-Roman wrestling for women and males respectively. But netball isn't a game that's predominantly played by males. There are male competitions available and there are pathways available, especially in Victoria. I know that there's plenty of mixed men's and development pathways through netball as well. Whether it's something that actually garners enough participation rates or people are really interested in is another question. Probably not something I could speak too well on either. But I know that a lot of men, as a lot of us would know, netball was derived from basketball to kind of form into a game that was completely different from what it is now. It was basically designed for ladies who couldn't necessarily play the tough game of basketball back in the day. So they would play in their very long dresses and bonnets, and it would be absolutely insensical how they would play. But the game has evolved to now be a really amazing athletic competition. And you see the accuracy rates of some of these goal shooters and goal attacks as well. I know there was a girl that debuted for the Vixens this year and debuted with, I think it was a 98% accuracy rate. And it was just amazing. It's a really good exhibition for athleticism and sport, and the culture of netball as well is something that I think all countries would want to embody.
Was that girl you're referring to at the Vixens, that Rani Samuelson?
Yeah.
Who Professor, you would remember from the days of the Southern Football Netball League that she played for the Heatherton Tunners. So she's come away a bit from there. With netball though, what's to stop it being ladies, men and mixed? We've had that at the tennis just recently. Australia obviously winning a medal in the mixed doubles, but what's to stop that being? Because I'll tell you what, there'd be a lot of people watching those particular 3 events.
Definitely. And I think there's enough variations of other sports that not a lot of people pay attention to. For example, all of the different lengths of athleticism that people, or athletic sports as well, that don't get a lot of views. And then also 3x3 basketball has also been something that confuses me a little bit ridiculous. But I think men's netball, women's netball and mixed netball especially would provide a really interesting opportunity for people to be able to display how genders can kind of work cohesively in a sport, as mixed netball has been a thing for, at least in Victoria, for 30, 40 years when I was having a look at it. And the Victorian Men's and Mixed Netball Association has existed since the mid-90s. So it's been around for a while. But I would love to see a men's competition generated into the game, and I can't see why it couldn't be a possibility. I think if you went out there and you showed male athletes that there was an opportunity and a pathway to actually compete at a national and Olympic level in that sport, they would go for it. But there's just nowhere for them to do it now.
Do John Coates' daughters or granddaughters play netball? Because he's surely the key to it. If Coates says it's in, it's in. Or Kevan. But surely, if ever they were going to do something for Australian sport in Olympics, this is an opportunity.
I'll tell you what, Judge, you stole my thunder, because I was going to say exactly the same thing as you. The way of it getting in is to either for the International Netball Association to petition the IOC to have it admitted, or for the local Olympic Organising Committee, and that in Australia would be the AOC, to put it to the Olympics that it should be admitted. So, of course, if Kevan or John Coates are interested in it then it would seem to be a fait accompli that it will be in.
That's how long? When do they announce what sports are in? Is it at the Olympics prior? Is it made that announcement, or is it a bit closer, Professor? Because I'm not sure that the age or the health of John Coates or Kevan, whose daughter actually, John, may be a runner. Let's not forget we did get to see her run in the Olympic torch relay. So I suspect that may well be her sport.
Normally it's about 7 years out from the next Olympics, so it would be 2005, Coutta.
Okay, so...
Sorry, 2025.
25, so yeah, so I think John Coates will be similar to like a Monty Burns that doesn't age at all. And if he does, they'll just stick him in one of those cryovacs so that he's able to be here for the 2032 Olympics, because he's the one that got it. He is one of the great Australians, John Coates. Let's not stuff around or piss in people's pockets here. We're lucky to have him. We are lucky to have him.
Okay, thanks. Now, Judge, I thought you'd like this, and Sarah. I did some study about Olympic sports that have been removed from the slate of games over the years. Some of the more interesting that have been removed: cannon shooting. One that I didn't expect: firefighting, pigeon racing, kite flying, art, and one that I had to look up: gleamer. I didn't know what gleamer was. Nordic wrestling.
We couldn't have firefighting at Brisbane because ScoMo would be straight saying, "I don't hold the hose."
Boom, boom.
Boom, boom. All right.
Sorry, can you just backtrack to cannon shooting?
Yes.
Was it the furthest the cannon gets shot, or do you put a person in the cannon, or what do you do?
No, the most
Korea style.
The most accurate, John.
The most accurate?
Yes.
How far away is the target? A kilometre.
Yeah.
Can I just interject with that, though, Professor?
It's a bit dangerous for the crowd as well if someone misfires.
Professor,
you need a fairly big stadium to hold that one.
You wouldn't want an Eddie the Eel type talent on the cannon, just Wooshka. Taking out half of Suncorp stand.
Coutta?
Professor, would we have quite a few people at the moment that we would nominate to be in that cannon? I've watched a couple this morning that probably we could put in a cannon, and let's hope there is no grandstand, because we could shoot them 1,000 kilometres and not come back.
Well, yeah, you're probably right there. All right.
What other sports, Professor? Surely you've done more research than just...
Tug of war, I know, was a...
yes.
Another one, which I always loved, was the standing jump, Coutta. So you have a high jump, but you couldn't run up to it. You just had to stand there and jump over it. I think the record was about 3 feet.
No flop, no Flosby.
No flop,
right.
no, you'll stand on your feet.
I'll give you a couple more.
Thank you.
Ballooning, croquet.
Oh, this is great.
Cycle polo, and wheelchair racing. Now, the thing about wheelchair racing, it doesn't identify whether it was for able athletes or disabled athletes.
So, Professor, as we know, there might have been a recent cheating affair at the Paralympics. The Spanish were a little bit behind the times, were they?
In what way, Coutta?
Well, there's a couple of able-bodied Spanish people that competed in the Paralympics in the basketball, I believe, Professor.
Allegedly, yes.
Allegedly.
We saw one of my favourite Olympians, Grant Hackett, in a wheelchair not long ago, but I don't think he was in any state to win any events.
All right.
You always get these technicalities. Can you remember the wife carrying competition where some blokes had their de facto, wasn't actually their married wife, and then some of them had their girlfriend. So you're always going to get these, technical cheats.
Well, at the end of the day, Judge, we probably could get the MRP involved in that because they are very black and white, that group.
All right, Sarah. Well, that's one to watch, and hopefully netball will be able to get their ducks in a row and get into the 2032 Olympics.
Professor, what other sports were nominated for it other than, I think we all agree netball would be a great addition and it's proven to be at the Commonwealth Games, but what other sports were mooted to be nominated for the Olympics?
Well, I think the ones that were rejected for the current Tokyo Olympics are all going to try again, such as bowling, chess.
10-pin.
Yeah, 10-pin bowling, chess, korfball, sumo wrestling, tug of war, and wushu.
Wushu?
Wushu? What does that mean?
Wushu is a martial art.
All right.
And you've forgotten a submission by an occasional panellist, Professor. Esports.
Oh, yes. Esports.
Surely.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yes, well, that might be coming.
Just a matter of interest, what do the pigeons win in the pigeon racing?
Yeah, no comment, John. All right. Round 22 NRL. Paul, get us back to some sensibility here.
Me?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's good to see the Storm for the local fans. Despite the description of them losing the plot, I think what it was a desperate Raiders team there trying to disrupt their slide. Ricky Stewart and Craig Bellamy go back about 30 plus years. So that was always going to be a very good competition and a very good match. Of some concern, though, for Storm fans is Corey Hawera-Naira of the Raiders went whooshka and knocked the Storm half clean out to the point he doesn't remember the game. Now, this is a serious topic that we talk about regularly on the show. What I'm hearing, there's no long-term damage. Now, we obviously can't say that. I'm talking about for this season for Jerome Hughes, but it was quite a sobering moment there in a very good win for the Storm against a very hungry opponent. So that was a real concern. The Rabbitohs fan in me thought, obviously don't want him to be seriously hurt, but if their halfback is out, that would seriously have hurt the Storm's prospects for this year. Pappenhausen is still trying to get back to his best. They're very lucky that they've got Nico Hines there, the Storm, but you're starting to see some deficiencies in the Storm defensive system showing. The fact that the Raiders put 16 points on them and came very close is some concern for Storm fans. They're still at the top of the market, but the interesting thing there is the very cheeky hooker they've got there, Brandon Hughes, Professor. He would look very good in a Bulldogs number 9 jersey next year. Sorry, Brandon Smith. He would look very, very impressive there. You've also been linked with the serial non-monogamist Api Carousel, who got in trouble for his COVID breaches in the number 9 jersey for the Dogs next year. That's all you really need for your recruitment to have a much better team than what you've got this year. Cameron Munster was the difference with the Storm. He's starting to step up as good players do right when needed. Jack Whiten was there for the Raiders to do the same thing. That was a very entertaining game, that Storm match, but Storm opponents would have been watching it very closely.
Paul, quick one on the knockout of Jerome Hughes. The commentary on that I thought was absolutely disgusting. He was knocked out cold. He was knocked out by a terrible tackle, but for the commentary to say the tackle went wrong, he mistimed the tackle, and I thought it was just really poor because at the end of the day, he's not tried to tackle him. He's tried to put a massive hit on him and has knocked him out cold. And there was no concern immediately for the Storm player. And this is a problem with, I think, some commentary at the time, is that we're trying to get rid of the head knocks. And Dermot Brereton's the same in AFL, is that it's all well and good to be tough and to put pressure on. But the other night, I reckon they overstepped line because that was a gutless hit, absolutely gutless. And then you compare it to the hit last night, I'm sure you'll talk about later on, was with the Canberra Raiders and the Manly Seagulls, the Manly Seagulls and Parramatta Eagles, is that they did not mention about the tackle. They talked about the player.
And even afterwards, they made reference to his social media apology. I never mean to hurt anyone.
Yeah.
I felt it was quite graphic. He said, "I hated seeing your eyes roll back in your head and you looking lifeless." Well, that's what happens when you knock a bloke out. He was remorseful on the field, but as you're saying, it shouldn't overly matter whether the bloke is just saying take that or whether he's remorseful. The action is the action. And quite rightly, his season is over. But when concussion's such a serious issue as it should be, the long-term damage of that is unknown. And it's certainly the same as the other tackle you mentioned as well. It doesn't seem too far removed from Taylor Walker saying, "I'll need some education." You shouldn't need some education. When you call someone a something, you've had the education you need. These players, there's no point saying afterwards, "I hated seeing your eyes roll back in your head." Don't whack someone in their head.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue that I took offence to, was that the commentary around it was like he just got it wrong. Like, hang on, guys. Head high hit, no arms in the tackle.
Yep.
I just think we've moved on from that, and it's the same as the AFL.
As it should be. So his season's over. As Storm fans would hope, very, very much hope that Jerome Hughes' season isn't over. Apparently, he seems to be okay, but can't remember the game, so he'll be out next week. The Storm, though, should finish runaway minor premiers despite the great form of the Panthers, who got back on winning ways. It was against the Dragons, though, who haven't won since a barbecue at Vorney's. They're on the ropes, absolutely, the Dragons, and the Panthers looked pretty good, but whether they'll challenge the firing Rabbitohs and the Storm is another question, Professor.
Yeah, Paul, I wanted to look at the Broncos-Roosters game. I was watching that on Friday night. Very exciting game, belied the Broncos' low position on the ladder. The lead changed hands 3 times in the last 8 minutes. But it was more about what Coutta was talking about the discussion of the penalty that was given to the Roosters in the 79th minute for the Roosters player who got hit in the head with a head-high tackle. It was described as a love tap, which just seemed to me to, and there were groans that a penalty was paid. Look, it was clearly a penalty and should have been paid. I don't think the commentators get it. I don't think they understand that when you get hit under the jaw with somebody who's swinging their arm at that sort of force, that it's going to create a problem.
I was messaging a mate at the time because I was watching the match, and I said, "It's all over, the Roosters have won." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "That'll be a penalty." And that's the rules now, and you have to support them. He did hit him high. It wasn't of the, I guess, negligence or the intent of the other hits we've mentioned, but it was a tackle where a guy got hit in the head. So unfortunately, it was a penalty. Yes, it had actually won the other team the game, but if we want to be serious on head-high hits, that shouldn't come into it, whether it's the first minute or the last minute, and it leads to a penalty goal that won the game. It was a tackle that hit a bloke in the head, so it was incredibly unfortunate. The Broncos gave it their all, but again, that shouldn't be relevant. They were write your own ticket odds, the Broncos, but they had that game won. So you have to be impressed with some of the players on show for the Broncos, and there's good signs for them ahead. But I've always said the Roosters are like the Terminator. They'll always find something, and they'll be thereabouts come finals time. If they're missing about 5 of their top players. If they had them there, they'd be a real title threat, but unfortunately they're not. So they've got to make do with what they have, and they certainly are putting in a big fight for a team down on troops.
Paul, the Professor mentions the penalty about the head high, which I think we all agree was there. The prior penalty that put the Broncos in front saw Victor Radley now suspended for 4 matches down to 3 with an early plea because of his loading. That seems. I know that the injury could have been a broken leg or whatever, but gee, that seems harsh, doesn't it?
It does, because your job is to block that field goal, and the way you block a field goal is by running at someone and throwing yourself at the ball, which is very close to where the leg is. So the obvious rhetorical query is, how could you pull out of that? I don't think that he adds anything to it. If obviously if the ball's already gone and then you arrive, that's very different. But he was trying to block that kick, and he arrives as the ball, I think, was just leaving the scene. It wasn't that he could have stopped himself like Superman in midair, stopping and reversing. So it's unfortunate, though. It's similar, though, to the penalty that won the Roosters the game. If you do make contact after the ball's gone, you're in trouble. And it's similar to the head rule. And it's unfortunate for Victor Radley, because I don't think he had any intent at all to maim someone's leg, but that was the way they viewed it. What was more about the impact could have maimed someone's leg, never mind that you couldn't have done anything else in trying to block that kick. You can't dive at someone and land at their feet. You have to go for the ball, which is in your momentum, you'd carry you through and hit their leg, unfortunately. So it was a big shame for him. The Roosters won, but he's a massive loss on top of their already shortened troop list.
Now, Paul, a match that the Gelding and I were very interested in. Rabbitohs took care of the Gold Coast Titans. The Titans didn't really look like a finals threat at all in that effort. And Adam Reynolds, 15 points. You'd be very sorry to see him go at the end of the year.
As I said, you can't have Napoleon on a battle-by-battle deal. That's what the Rabbitohs pretty much offered Reynolds. We just couldn't fit him under the cap. He's just playing out of his skin. He's a humble type, grew up across the road from Redfern Oval. There was a movie once, Remember the Titans. I think that's what we'll be saying come finals time, because the Titans look to be on the absolute ropes. The bookies have made it pretty clear that the team that will make it into the 8 that isn't there at the moment are the Knights, and I can declare them already for today absolute specials in the match to come this afternoon against the Sharks. And unfortunately, Professor, I think the Warriors, who are some chance of making finals, an outside chance, but your Dogs seem to have the spoon also sewed up. I just think the Warriors will be too strong. I'll give you a score, 22-10 to the Warriors, and I think that the Knights, with Ponga and Pearce combining, could do a real number on the Sharks. 30-10, I'll give you on that one.
Okay. Now for Schooner, the Sea Eagles with a Reuben Garrick hat trick and some points as well. He scored 28 points of the 56. The Sea Eagles will be very happy.
Well, very happy. And they've got a player out in the back line, Saab, firing alongside the Ferrari that is Tom Turbo, who will win the Brownlow equivalent, the Dalium, in a canter. So Manly is just on fire, and it's no surprise that the bookies have already factored in that they will finish top 4. There's no doubt about that at all. They will take the Roosters' spot in the top 4. I'm almost certain of that. It's going to be a great final series. The Eagles are the team that no one will want to face.
And that game last night, we saw a send-off again for a head-high tackle, and we saw a sim bidding for a professional foul. Parramatta hitting form at the right time of year for all those that really like Parramatta. And they've got a captain there whose manager supposedly is asking for big bucks, who I don't think personally is worth anywhere near that. But they were very poor last night, Paul, and they'll make the 8, but I can't see them winning a final.
The discussion about Gutherson, though, and you've got to factor this in, it happens in the AFL. He wants as much money as he can because he's got a family, et cetera, et cetera. The managers are the one who ask for as much as they can get because that's their job. I don't think Gutherson's being as greedy as what's being played out. He's never once asked for $1 million. His managers haven't been saying that. It's just that the Eels offer seems low compared to what is out there for similar caliber players. Now, the stats actually support his case in terms of metres run, in terms of try assists. He's played every match. He's very durable, and he's the best player on that team. So if your manager's out there trying to get the best deal he can for you, that's his or her job, and it would be negligent if they didn't do so. I think we've got to be careful in, not that you've done that, calling any player greedy. You've got to get the most you can from this game, particularly seeing how brutal it is. But if he was to go, the Eels would be in a rapid decline because they already are struggling. He's the heart and soul of that team. So they would struggle even more. But I haven't seen a team plummet like that for quite some time. Even the Raiders' fall has been arrested. There's something wrong there at that Eels team, and I haven't heard what it is, but there's something very wrong there.
Paul, my point around it is that to discussing it or putting it out in the public now, when the team is struggling and we're coming into a final series, I just think it's genuinely poor form.
No, well, he's come out and parked it. He said we'll talk about it at the end of the year. So I think that he wisely has stepped in and his manager's backed off.
Yep.
And the club doesn't want to talk about it now. I don't think it was prompted by him to try and get as much as he can. It's been parked, and as it should be, because the Eels have more to worry about than his demands. They are in all sorts of trouble.
So this final point or final questions for you, Paul. The final two teams in the 8 at the moment are the Titans on 20 and the Raiders on 20. My thoughts are that I can see the Knights making it, and I can see the Sharks getting there.
Possibly. I think the Eels they've got enough points to make the 8. The Titans and the Raiders are the two that are on the edge, the precipice, if we call it that. I can say quite confidently the Raiders have enough talent to make the 8. I think the Titans won't, which will be a blow for the Gold Coast generally, in terms of another sporting team that hasn't succeeded despite enormous expectations there. And your Knights, I think, with Ponga, who's in the top 3 or 5 players in the game, and Mitchell Pearce back, that should be enough to get them sneaking into the 8 as a dark horse.
Okay.
As I did predict pre-season there, Professor, for you, without blowing any sort of trumpets.
Fair enough. I was going to throw to the Gelding to get some tips for today, but he seems to have...
No, back.
He's
back.
Off
buying the lobsters, I think.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, he's at the fish market, not the South Melbourne one.
And we've got to say, Gelding, that we successfully eradicated the curse of the last leg in the Professor's Parlay. We managed to get all 3 up from yesterday.
Very good to see the very successful Professor Parlays back. Coutta, I hope you was on it. We've got over the curse of the giraffe with his last leg syndrome. So hopefully all
that's
will
a
be
general punting curse. Don't put that on
forward. Now, Professor, some tips.
Yes,
well,
please,
hopefully
Gelding.
by the end of the day, the certainty of the day is Melbourne to be on top of the league ladder when they knock over Adelaide today. So go the D's. I'm on the D's bandwagon, Professor, and have been all year.
Gelding, your first 2 tips on the hurdles, I'll start calling you Flojo.
Love that. I certainly do like the hurdles, and the first couple of tips have both won.
Oh,
so one.
Probably I was on them.
yeah, gee, that's nice.
Gelding, you're not on the A list, Coutta. You've got to get on the A list. Send him a 6-pack of Gravitas beer. You might get on the A list.
I missed the first 2. I don't know where I was. Sorry. You must have as well, John. Did you, or did you get them?
I'm sure Mark has
race 2, Roland Garros won. You wouldn't like that, Coutta. You hate tennis. Oh, sorry.
Yes. Roland Garros got up. So, Professor, remaining races today at Coleraine, we like race 3, number 1, Urquhart.
They'll lose.
Into race 4, number 2, Big Blue, over the steeple jumps. And then we like True Medal in race 8, number 3. And I noticed that the giraffe likes race 7, number 3, Miss Sharp, with LC Williams aboard. If we go to Cranbourne, Professor, where we've had a third and a winner already, but going forward, we might go race 4, number 5, La Masca, to be ridden by Craig Newitt, into race 5, number 3, In the Lap of the Gods, for Michael D, and finish probably with the bet of the day, race 6, number 2, Brainbridge, so ridden by Jamie Mott. And the giraffe has picked out race 9, number 8, Into the Rio, at the juicy odds of the paper of $26.
Oh.
So there's some.
Winning the Black Book pre-COVID, though, I think that could be an old entry into the Black Books.
Yes. Had a look for a Sportsfan's own Craig Robinson, but unfortunately decided to have the roster day off, Professor.
He's got the RDO, but he is riding at Ballarat tomorrow, Gelding.
All right. You got one for us tomorrow, Professor?
Yes, his first rider's in race 3, horse 3, Toffee Nuts.
Toffee Nuts. Okay. There's an interesting name for you. Can we play Trivial Form Guide?
Oh, I don't know. We better ask the judges. Pia got any aim and bets for this afternoon, Judge?
Her method, just to let her secret, is any horses 17 to 1 or 34 to 1. And I've got to tell you, incredibly, it's paying off. So there you go. That's a little tip for the punters.
Should we take that into account in the Professor's parlay next week, Gelding?
Good odds.
Yes, you know the theory of good odds, Professor?
Yeah, go on. What is it?
Hey, you can't eat odds.
No, you can't eat odds.
Is he going there just for that horse, Professor? That's the big question.
No, he's not just going there for Toffee Nuts. He's got another couple of rides.
I think you just like the name, Professor.
It did strike. Judge?
To your research that Coutta was after, a couple more sports that I found is that the IOC must have been in the gravitas back in the day. Dueling pistol shooting, where they shot at a statue dressed up like a jeweler in all of the outfit. And the other one is standing triple jump. So you don't run up to the triple jump, you just stand there and do 3 jumps. I think they would have been inspired by kids at kindergarten, who are the only sort of people doing that kind of activity. So, yeah, as I say, the IOC must have been on the jungle juice back in the day.
Is that where your hatred for triple jump comes from, John? The standing triple jump?
Probably. Did you like it, Coutta?
I didn't watch any. I did not see one triple jump at the recent Olympics. So
Well,
I don't see
I
why
like the idea,
quadruple
Professor.
jump, they go further.
Judge,
Just
because at the AFL kind of training camp, they do the standing height jump to see who can touch the highest of the thing. So I reckon the standing triple jump and the standing long jump would be good to watch.
Now, tell the truth, Judge. You've got an aversion to any sport that ends up jumping into a sandpit, don't you?
It's a silly concept. It's a silly concept because you try to explain it to a girl at a party when she wants to know what you do for a job and they say, I jump into a sandpit. And then what do? Well, I should go back and start and try and jump further than I did the last time. How long does that conversation go for? About a minute?
Well, the other one, of course, can be standing there and pointing Percy at the porcelain and see distance, can't you?
More interesting.
I'll give you a fine standing sport, though. Darts.
Well,
You're not going to call that not a sport. 180. It's a great sport, darts.
Coutta.
Yes, mate.
On that, is it accuracy or distance?
Distance on that particular one.
Not accuracy.
Need a strong stream.
Not accuracy.
We had a kid at school, Coutta. Sorry about that, just to bring the tone down.
Sorry,
We
Professor.
could go over the wall of the men's or the boys' toilets into the girls, and that's Olympic gold medal worth, I think.
All right.
Pretty good.
All right, gentlemen. On that note, we might call it a day.
Sorry, Sarah.
That's
We'll
we'll
look forward to talking to you all again next week, and until then, a very good afternoon.
Good afternoon.